Okay, good evening. We're going to start the budget workshop. It's 5:33, and I'm going to open the meeting and call to order. The next item on the agenda is public comment.
Mrs. Vice President, can you hear me?
Yes.
May I be recognized for just a quick moment?
What do you say? He wants to be recognized for just a moment. Okay.
Thank you. I regret that I can't be at the board meeting in person this evening, but as I explained to Ms. Servio, and I have a pre-conflict with another matter for another client. I just wanted to say that I did notice that there was an agenda item later this evening regarding the board's consideration of its legal counsel, and I just wanted to say that I certainly respect the board's decision to hire whomever it chooses in that regard. And I just wanted to say that in the event that if as a result of tonight's meeting, my firm parts ways with the district, that it has been a real privilege and a pleasure to work for San Benito CISD. It's been great getting to know everyone. The district has many hardworking administrators and employees and board members. And I just wanted to thank everyone for the opportunity to work with the district if in fact this is where we part ways. And I wish everyone the very, very best.
Thank you, Mr. Weller.
Thank you, Mr. Weller. We appreciate the
Thank
time
you.
and
I do need.
put into our district.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much. And I do need to step out now, but wish everyone the best and have a good night.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, moving on to agenda item 2, public comment. The next item on the agenda is public comment. Before we begin, I will remind our audience members of the board's procedures for handling public comment. The public comment portion of our meeting is available to members of the public according to the following. At regular board meetings, the board shall permit public comment regardless of whether the topic is an item on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. At all other board meetings, public comment shall be limited to items on the agenda posted with notice of the meeting. Anyone who would like to speak during public comment must sign in prior to the start of the meeting and list the topics they want to discuss. An individual's public comments to the board shall not exceed 5 minutes per meeting. Please keep your comments or criticisms civil and courteous. Please avoid using profanity and refrain from making personal attacks on others during your opportunity to speak. Lastly, we ask that you do not discuss students who are not your own children. If a speaker is seeking board resolution of a specific complaint, that concern should be addressed through the district's grievance process. District policy DGBA has been established for addressing employee complaints. Policy F and G is the avenue for filing parent complaints, and policy GF addresses community member complaints. Grievance forms can be obtained at any campus administration office or at the district's central administration office. Thank you, and our first speaker is going to be Miss Mary Maney. We're getting your time set up.
Is there anything to do about the echoing?
I wish there was, but we'll work on it.
Oh,
Okay, we're ready, Miss Maney.
Okay, thank you. Dr. Cruz, President Lopez, Ms. Savion, and trustee members. I do realize this is about the budget worksheet, workshop, and I am speaking as a teacher at San Benito High School who is in charge of the STEMS program, where I run STEMS events, electric car races, and archery. So I have a 199 account that is my transportation, and I get a $400 budget. Well, in prior years, I check these balances often. It stays at 400, never changes. I'm also a member of the SAC committee, so when we found out about accounts that are not being fully funded, there's a number put in it and that's it. You know, it's not really adjusted in that. I happen to be guilty of that. I have a transportation fund that is, I have spent more than was originally allotted to me. I wish I had known about this. I mean, I kept up with it, but I didn't know that we were, oh, thank you. I didn't know that we were not getting fixed on that. So I do know that I'm part of the problem that you guys are starting to address. But it would be really nice for those that are in activities and stuff like this that actually have 199 and 865 accounts. For those of you who are not actively involved, 865 student activity, 199 is local. They closed out the 199 in May. No, excuse me, in March. I have field trips going all the way through May. I had a field trip the week after it got closed that I had to scramble to find money for the bus because now my transportation account wasn't there. If you could come up with a way to let those of us that are activities know how to make sure that we've got funding being covered, as well as how we can encumber. If I know I've got field trips in May, and you're going to close out the books in March, what do I have to do or make sure that is being done so that I have that money that was in my account to be able to spend for that event? All right. I know I usually do nice, light, fluffy things, but guys, we got a headache here going on. Also, the other thing is I'm getting some small grant amounts in. So, you know, is this something that I'm going to need a new account for or a new fund, new heading thing for? I know you guys are in the process of doing a lot of updating of procedures and all this, but it would help if we got some communication, okay? Because some of us don't fit into the category exactly, you know. Yeah, I got to find all those cracks. But it would be very helpful if I know that I'm part of the solution and not part of the problem. So anything that you guys can come when you're doing this workshop and come up with that could help, you know, from the standpoint of a sponsor. This is something that would make your life a little bit easier, make our life a little bit easier, particularly at the end of the year. So again, I do thank you for taking time to hear me on this, because this isn't what I usually speak on, but as I said, I recognize it as a problem. I recognize I'm part of the problem, and I don't want to be there. So any help would be greatly appreciated. Thank you very much.
Moving on to our next.
You're trying to adjust them.
This is yours, work? Moving on to our next agenda. No, nothing.
Test.
Moving on to our next agenda item is number 3, discussion regarding proposed budget for the 2023-2024 school year.
Okay, with that, I'll call Ms. Mata up so that she can start setting the stage for our 23-24 budget and just go over the parameters of what we are going to work under. So, Ms. Mata, are you?
Good evening, Dr. Cruz, Mrs. Rion, and the rest of the board members. I'm going to start, hold on. So I have a presentation for y'all, and this is just to start off the conversation about the 23-24 budget. And this is we're going to talk about revenues. That's where we start at. So to begin with, the budget process is that we have to set a date for the, for you to approve. And I'm going to, the first 3 or 4 slides are just this is based on our legal and local policies for the budget process. So I'm gonna go through them and read them in full. But it's to cover all the expenditures, to estimate the revenues, and to just look at each program according to the county. I'm sorry.
Ma'am, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but is there any way that you can get somebody to put the, it's not on their screen?
Oh,
No, she said the first 3 won.
Oh, they're not?
You said the first 3 screens we're not gonna get, right?
oh no, I mean, all this should be in there. I'm just not gonna go read them verbatim.
Oh, I got
Okay.
So, but
Just so
I
we
don't
can
know.
follow you here on the screen.
They're working on it. Okay, sorry. Okay, so like I said, these first slides are just about the budget process. The first 2, this one is just the legislative process that states what we have to do. And then the next one is a continuation of the meetings that need to be called, and then we need to adopt the budget. And then we have a July 1st, of course, fiscal year as the last bullet. This one is our local policy about how we need to plan, how effective it has to be, the process that we need to meet our educational goals and achieve them, and meet with district and campus leaders and committees to make sure that we're planning accordingly. This is the estimated revenues. This is where our budget starts. So I have been working on I think I missed the timeline. I'm sorry. I'm like, I know I missed something. So we started working on the budget process back in February. I started writing numbers with Mr. Martinez, which is our PEMS director, and working with my director of accounting, Mr. Cortez, going back and forth with Amanda Bronson, which is from TASBO, confirming our numbers. And to this point, we actually met with her on May 17th. This is the latest that we've met with her, just because different things have been going back and forth, especially with legislative session going on right now. It ends on May 29th. And so we're still up in the air with whether or not the basic allotment is going to increase or not. So they are advising us currently, both TASBO and STAS, that we use numbers which are current budget and don't think about getting an increase for the basic allotment as of yet. I know that they had a meeting today at 8 a.m. that they were going to consider the House bill to see whether or not the basic allotment was going to increase. But as of yet, the numbers that you're going to look at are with current law and not legislative increases or anything. Again, we've met with staff. HR, I know, continues to meet with the staff, with their campus or department budgets or directors to talk about staffing and personnel. That started in January and February as part of those meetings. HR continues to meet with them, like I said. From March to May, I've been reviewing the department and campus budgets with the directors or the campus principals. I know I had my first campus meeting today. The next meetings in June will have to transpire as far as meeting with the boards on campus and department budgets in detail. And if you want to do it by function and take it as a whole and so forth. The 13th is to review the overall budget. By then, hopefully, like I said, the legislation is going to end May 29th. Hopefully by then, we get more clarity on the revenues itself, because you'll see the impact that it's having currently. And also on salaries, there is an legislation that is going to look at salary increases. So if we do get a basic allotment increase, there's a talk that we have to do, like, I don't remember, if you remember, like a couple years ago, that you had to use a certain percentage of the increase for salary increases. The same is in the talks currently, or if it's gonna be a set amount and so forth. So we're looking at that as well. So hopefully by the 6th, not the 13th for sure, we'll have more information about what the legislation did, either it's gonna be a special meeting called or not from the governor. So, I'm sorry. And then tentatively, if we need a meeting on the 13th, if y'all want to go into more detail, we'll have a 13th. If not, we'll go to the 20th to just review the overall proposed budget, and then with adoption on the 27th. Okay? You're welcome to change the dates if y'all feel you have to. I'm sorry.
So you're saying by the next board meeting, you should have more as far as where we're standing, so.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Actually, today I was reviewing the salaries that we currently have, because that's what we're basing it on. And then if needed, do the increase from there. So hopefully, I'll finalize that with the HR this week. So, okay, so for the estimated revenues, of course, we base it off of student enrollment, or student ADA, not enrollment, because we get funded on ADA, which is our average daily attendance. So I did a little trend so you could see from 2016-17 to current. And you could see in 16-17, we had 9,742 students. In 17-18, it decreased to 9,521. And I put the final summary of finances that I used as a basis. And so in 16-17 to 17-18, we lost 221 students. And then from 17-18 to 18-19, we increased by 56 students to an ADA of 9,577. And then in 19-20, which again, this is the beginning of COVID, was 19-20, was March of 2020. And so that went down to 8560.167, and that was a loss of 1,017 students. Then from 19-20 to 2021, we went to 8984, which was a gain of 424 students. And again, this is when we were at virtual. So in essence, everybody got counted present for the most part. And then in 21-22, which was last year, we went down to 8254 for a loss of 730 students. Again, the TPAR, I don't know if you remember last year, the TEA said they're going to give you a hold harmless. So they were going to go back to 1920 before COVID and look at your ADA and then compare it to 21-22. And if you needed adjustment for the operational minutes, they would do that and give you credit. So this is where, and I don't know, I mean, I could go back and look at it if you would like, but at this point, since I wasn't here, I don't know what your revenues would have looked like or your ADA would have looked like without TPAR. But if you'd like that information, just let me know and I'll try and get that for you. Going into this current year, as you can tell, we're at 8,016.976 for a loss of 237. From there, just to let you know, 97 students, or 97 ADA, I'm sorry, it's like 96.9 something, I believe, are attributed to the Go Academy. If not, the 237 would have been like 334 students instead of the 237. Just wanted to point that out, because that leads to my current, or my ADA projection for 23-24. I have discussed this with Ms. Servillon to make sure that whether we wanted to stay consistent with the 8,016 for next year, taking into consideration that we're going to have the Collegiate Academy and the Global Academy, that hopefully if they bring in students, it'll be like 100 and 100 or more, so that'll be 200. So we lost 237, it'll be less, and hopefully work on our attendance rate. Currently, I know towards the end of the 5th, 6 weeks, and maybe the 4th, I know they were pushing attendance higher, because some of the 6 weeks were kind of low in the low 80s and so forth. So I think that that's something we can work on to hopefully maintain our 88 at 8,000, if not increase it. So again, this is something, conversation with the board. If you want me to be more conservative with the numbers, let me know, and I'll go back and run numbers on that figure.
Monica, excuse me. So what's important to note is this is ADA, right? We're basing this on ADA, not enrollment. There is talk about enrollment being that bar, so that way that we are funded rather than ADA, but we don't know for sure yet.
don't know.
But what we do know is that in 22-23, we had projected, as far as our ADA goes for our budget, 7,857.169. But we exceeded that, so that was a good thing.
Yes.
Because, we were underestimating our ADA, and we ended up at 8,016. So with that being said, it depends a lot on what happens when it comes to enrollment versus ADA for next year. And furthermore, it depends on if the allotment would increase or remain the same, because there's a lot of talk about if it's enrollment, they might decrease the amount given per student, which is something that, of course, districts are pushing back on. So I don't know if you want to, is there anything else you need to add?
No, at this point, I think that's it, unless you have questions. Okay, so the next slide, this is a summary of finance template, and it's kind of blurry for me, so I'm gonna open my computer, sorry. Okay. So the next slide is the revenues. So if you look at line, and I just gave you a snippet of the actual revenue that the ADA is generating. And I gave you the 21-22 because that's the way the template is set up. It has 21-22, 22-23, and 23-24, and ongoing years. But since we're going to be talking about 22-23 and 23-24, and that's a comparison, I gave you 21-22 because it stays there. So just so you can look at it for the foundation school program, which is where all our funding comes for the ADA and our special POPs. We went in 21-22 from 71 million to 68 million this year, and then 66 million next year, which is a drop of 1.4 million. And again, this is having to do with the ADA and the special POPs. And then in our available school fund, you'll see that it was 4.6 million in 21-22, went down up to 5.1 million. And I'll go into this a little bit more in the next slide. And you'll see where it's gonna drop to 3.2 million. So it's a difference of 1.9 million. So for overall loss in Fund 199, as it stands of now, leaving ADA the same with special POPs, we're losing about $3.5 million, okay? And then for 599, and this is the one, the 599 is our bonds. This is the one that I had been telling you back in like November, I believe, that we had submitted an amendment for our bonds. We actually got it finalized, and TEA owes us about $1.1 million. So hopefully that'll help us offset this amount that you see it on the EDA, we're losing $172,000. And then on the IFA, we're losing $139,000. So hopefully I've already worked on, and when we go into more detail, I've already worked on 598, which is for the LED lights, and the 599, and that's about $1.7 million. So that's gonna help with the offset, because the money for the LED funding, which is Fund 598, we transfer from 199. So that just adds to it. And then from the taxes and the estimated EDA and IFA funding that we currently have, we still need to offset it by 1.4 million based on the tax rate of the 1.2799 that we have set for the INS. So the 1.1 million is gonna help us. Instead of transferring 1.4 million to INS, the Fund 599 will transfer 300-some thousand. So that's gonna help us with that. And we did ask, like, when are we expecting that funding to come into our bank? They said hopefully soon. So they still don't have a tentative date. So we haven't gotten the money. We've just been told that that's what it is. Okay. Sorry.
Ms. Mata, I'm sorry to interrupt you. When we voted to decrease the tax rate, is that going to play into this budget, or will that hold over till next?
Yeah. Well, if the last slide is on tax rate, so but you'll see it. So yes. Just a total recap for the 22-23, which is current year. We're expecting 76,168,220 compared to 72,326,511.
Next slide.
Oh, sorry. No, this one's the last.
Okay.
The number 53. I'm sorry. So a total difference of 3,841,701 decrease overall for both general fund and INS funding.
But did you want to explain why
yeah.
the 3 million
So,
loss?
yes. So here, if you look at this next slide, this is a 22-23 other programs, okay? And we got 3.4 million of, we got 3.4 million in Formula Transition Grant funding. And then we got 4.4 million for the MOE and equity of federal money related to COVID. So those two are going away. COVID, of course, is already done with. And so the total between those two is 7.8 million in 22-23, which is current year. In 23-24, you see zeros all the way down. So that's affecting us. That's part of the reason that we're losing that money, the 3.some million that we're losing. That plays into it. So because those are going away, we don't qualify for them. I mean, they're gone. So that's part of the reason that I wanted to point that out, that it's, yes, we are leaving the ADA the same, the special POPs at this point are the same for 23-24, but because we're losing funding because it's not there anymore, the federal government TA is saying like COVID's gone, it's done with, so we're taking 4.4 million from you.
Ma'am, so can you please explain it or elaborate I guess for the new board members as well as the community, why this COVID implanted this to our school district and also what it was used for?
I would have to, as a whole, I can tell you that this money, since it's coded to 5812 and 5811, and more than likely 5812 is where it goes because that's the bulk of the money. When you budget for it, in the next slide after this, I'm going to go into special pops. So TA says you're going to get funded for your special populations, which is your GT, your state bilingual, your state comp, your at-risk kids, your bilingual kids, your gifted and talented, your special ed, your college and career military ready, your dyslexia, your early ed. You're going to get funded for all these. These programs, you need to spend X amount of money, whether it be 55% or 100% of the funding. When we do the budget, you divide based on that. You budget with the PIC 21, which would be a gifted and talented, PIC 22, which would be your CTE, which is your technical classes, and then you have your 25 and so forth, right? So when we budget based on that. Everything else is budgeted under PIC 11 or PIC 99, which is your local funds, when it encompasses everything else. So for me to be able to tell you exactly how that money was budgeted, I can tell you by like I said, by program, intent code, which is the special pops and your local funding. I can't specifically tell you where that was funded. I did not work on that budget, and I can tell you what I can read off of Skyward and interpret those reports. But I can try and go back to see what kind of information is on the budget folder for last year and try and get you more information on that if you'd like.
Sorry, 'cause I kind of think it's important that we're going to start adding all these great things for our kids, like the schools of choice, and also to give everybody a heads up and understand what the impact is going to be to promote our school, because that's exactly what we're doing. So I think it'll be good to have that information as well.
Okay.
Okay.
So for the new programs,
Yeah, like
or
the
new
schools of
collegiate-
choice, how much is going to impact our budget and all
Okay.
that good stuff. Thank you.
I think we will get more granular with the allotments as we are building the budget. Right now, we want to make sure that we look at 6,100, which is our staff, which is going to be 80% of our budget at least. And so we need to make sure that we cover that well. And we're still also waiting for that as far as, the funding and so forth, as the state is still up in the air, and we're going to go ahead and bring that to you. So we will look at the bulk of our money in 6,100. Also important to note is when we did have ESSER, we did supplant salaries, and we're still supplanting salaries. So, yes, through ESSER 3. So that's another thing that's going to have an impact. And then again, we'll get more granular as we start building the budget and bringing that information forward.
Okay. So then, again, this is the slide where, like I was stating, where you have your special populations. And you can see pick the 23 right here under number 21. 23 signifies special ed, and it gives you the allotment as per the FTEs and so forth, that the reports that Mr. Martinez, our director for PEMS, sent me. And so this next slide, as you can tell, on this slide, I'm sorry, yeah, there, you can see where it says spend 55%. Those that don't have anything means that we have to spend 100%. Okay, and this next slide, I just, in essence, just wrote the same thing and then multiplied out what the 55% in it would be, or if it was 100%. So for state comp, we get $12,543,334, of which we have to spend 55%, which is $6,898,834. For bilingual ed, we get $1,318,830, of which 55% needs to be spent. That's $725,357. For career and technology, we get $8,435,098. 55% is required, and that's $4,639,304. Special education gets $7,396,393, of which 55% is $4,068,016. The GT, the next one, or 100%, is 171. That's supposed to be a comma. 121,712. Early ed is 1,238,594. College and career and military readiness is 846,000, and then the dyslexia allotment is 48,664. So these are the amounts that we use, or that I'm using when I'm meeting with the staff. I can tell you that currently, what I did is, like I said, I don't know the budgets for all the departments or the campuses. So what I did is I went back and I did a 5-year analysis. I did 18, 19, 19, 20, 2021, and 21, 22 actual expenditures by function, by object code. And then I did 22, 23, and I put the original budget, the revised, so they could know if they did budget amendments, and then what they spent up to the date that I extracted the report. And I'm meeting with them, and I'm going, if they want, I go line item to, by line item. Some of them know their budgets really well, so they already know if they did a budget amendment or they spent something, they know what they spent. Others, we actually go into the system and I check, okay, what did you spend? And we'll go over it and they're like, oh, okay, yes, and so forth. So they can know their budget, so when they're planning for next year, they know what to look at. And then I'll point out, okay, this this object code is a little bit high and it's been consistent for the last years. Or you know what, it was high over here, not here. So that way they can look at different things and I'll highlight it and I'll make notes on the side and I'll send them the template so they can work on it when they're meeting, when they're working on their budget. So that's how we're doing the state allotments.
Okay, so what's important to note too, and I think that that's something, the conversations you've been having with especially department heads, is the fact that you have a budget. This is your budget. If you have moved your money more into 6,100, which is personnel, that means there is going to be a decrease in 6,300, or in 6,200, or in 6,400, right?
Yes.
So that's something that I think is new when we're having those conversations, because those conversations hadn't been had before. So they're increasing their budget by hiring 3 or 4 more people, but they're thinking that they still have this allotment over here. And we've seen that trend. So we're going and we're really narrowing down that scope. We're looking at per pupil expenditure. We're looking at master schedules and how that impacts students and the expenditure and the allocations of funds for staffing. So it's been a very intricate process. And we've sat down with every principal, every director, and we've been very deliberate and very specific on how those funds are going to be expended, allocated, and then even regulated. So, and I can tell you that several directors have already said we've really never sat and gotten this granular, so they didn't understand why we're taking, let's say, 20,000 from here because, you know, you put it in another object code.
So I think, you know, with the pressing situation that we had here, and of course post-COVID, and you can see that they're going to take away some funds. I think what would be helpful for everyone, it's very obvious, is that we need to understand the staffing formula. Okay, we need to understand from the top all the way down as far as, you know, are we increasing certain jobs in certain areas? Are we not? You know, due to student enrollment, all that stuff, just so we can have a better understanding. Just when we get calls or if we get calls regarding all the decreases in these areas, you know, of funding, then it needs to be reported. I mean, not so much for us, but I think, you know, of course, for the community to understand too what a decrease in enrollment does. You know, it affects everybody across the board, but I think more for our staff, because it's very obvious some staff members have some questions, and I think it needs to be, like I said, you know, rolled out or explained to them the way it's going to happen from here moving forward.
Okay.
Right.
I know, like I said, that when I met with the HR, the Mr. Gallegos did talk, I know what, for the campuses, did talk about the student-staff ratio and so forth. For the departments, I know that we did not get into it this year, but it's something that I did talk to them as far as, let's say, for maintenance. No, there is a national standard that you budget staffing or allocate staffing based on the square footage of the building. If it's gonna be yard crew on the square footage. We haven't gotten to that point yet, and we didn't get it to that point this year, but we did discuss it with them. It's a national standard for different categories, and we can do that if you'd like. So, but I can tell you that for the staffing, for the teacher student, that was done, that was looked at. Mr. Gallegos can share more information on that. But for the other areas, like I just stated, even security has a national standard. Like everybody has one that we can use. And I know that when I discussed with Mo Casey, they did ask like, okay, what are y'all doing? And I did tell them like, okay, I know that they do this currently, and I know that we've already had the conversation with the directors to let them know for next year that that's something that we might be working on to implement here.
Thank you, ma'am.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
And I'd like to give another example here. And these are the conversations that we are having, because we have had them with departments as well. They want to add, per se, a coordinator or a specialist. And so when we ask, well, what is the funding source you're going to use? They typically say 211 or 199, which means that comes out of our general federal budget or our general state or local budget. So now we're talking about adding staff and adding an FTE. As far as the staffing formulas on each campus, we were very deliberate, sat down and had those conversations. That information should be rolled forward from the principal to the staff to the master schedule plan. We did find some classes, for example, that had 2 students, that had, and they were not at all, in one class on top of another. They weren't layered or anything. It was 2 students in one class, 1 student, 8 students in another class. And so those are some of the things that we're tightening up, because we want to make sure that we are maximizing our staff and then also giving our students what they need. So those conversations were had, and they're going to continue to happen as we look at the budget, because that's the only way that we can do this in a manner that is going to keep us healthy when it comes to finances.
Ms. Mata, I had a question. As far as everything you're working on, I really do appreciate you breaking it down and so forth. But do you think that every department is gonna be dropping a certain percentage?
I know
Or
that.
are we gonna try and keep them where they're at right now?
No, actually, we are doing 10% less from last year's budget. Because if you look at it and you take salaries into consideration, the 2% increase that was given last year was never embedded into the budget. And then I have to carry that 2%, so that's 4% in essence. And then if the board decides, they want to give another, so if I were to do a 5%, Ms. Everett and I had that conversation. If I do 5%, I'm only, in essence, doing 1% from 62 to 6,600. So that wouldn't be sufficient. And so we decided to do 10% and see where it gets us. I met with all the directors, and none of them said, oh, that's too much or anything. So I haven't heard one complaint. Everybody said that that was feasible, that they would make it work, and so forth. And like I said, I guess because I did give them their trend from 18-19 to 21-22, and then I gave them what their original budget was and the revised and what they've actually spent, and there was always money left there. I think that that's what helped, with those conversations, that none of them ever told me, oh, I can't handle it, or no, I need that for my budget or anything. Everybody was, okay, we'll make it work. So I haven't heard any complaints or anything.
So as far
it's
as
doing
price
10
increases on everything else, would it be best, like you said, that you discussed with Ms. Servillon, maybe go the 5% instead of the 10%? Because that's gonna be huge, isn't it, 10%?
Well, we also talked to department heads and told them, let's just say that you need something, write a proposal, give us the backup for what you need, and then we look into the budget for it. So we take it on a case-by-case basis.
That was also told to them. I told them, if you have that one-time expenditure or a need that you might need, submit it, and that way we can talk to the board and see if we can add it to the budget. And that would be on top of whatever their allotment was. Because that's my understanding, that that's the way the one-time expenditures approved by the board works. And that would be brought to the board in June.
In June?
Yeah, that's what.
Yes,
yeah.
sir.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. The last slide, I'm sorry, I lost mine. Is the tax rate, Dr. Cruz. Again, the proposed tax rate, and again, this is based off of the summary of finance template. If you look at the M&O tax rate, because of MCR, our ceiling would be 0.9252 without a tax rate approval. And that comes from the state, like I can't do anything without a tax rate increase. So in essence, our tax rate, yes, there was a 1 cent or 1.5 cent decrease, but this is even lower than that. And then our INS tax rate would stay the same at 0.2799 for a total tax rate of 1.2051. So the estimated tax collections, and this is collections between current and delinquent only, because that's what our funding is based on. Yes, we budget for delinquent, delinquent tax collection, but the state only funds us for 5711, 5712, which is actual collections of the taxes. So this is what our tax collection would be, 15.6 million for the MNO and 3.7 million for the INS. So any questions on the tax rate, and that would be it.
How much of a difference was it from before we did the decrease? Do you know?
From this, I can check real quick.
I think it's about 300.
So apparently, 300,000, you said? Oh. That's fine, Ms. Mata, you can give it to us later, I mean.
Okay, sorry. Any other questions?
No, thank you. We look forward, is my mic on? We look forward to the rest of the presentations for the incoming budget workshops. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, the time is now 6:14, and I don't need to, a motion or anything, right? And the budget workshop is now adjourned.